Welcome everyone to Melfuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about Squid Game Season 2 Episode 3. It's called 001. So spoilers for the episode. Sorry for the wait for this one. I watched this episode on Friday and then didn't have time to record it. And then I was busy Saturday, Sunday and Monday. So here we are on Tuesday. But this was a very interesting episode to go into because I'd seen some reactions to this one online and they were very divisive. I saw some people say it was where the season had its stride, and I saw some other people say that this is where the show had jumped the shark, and this is the episode that proved that the magic of season 1 was gone. And I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to make of that. It was very strong opinions on either side of the line. Very binary, which is funny given the vote that takes place towards the end of this episode. So very curious going in. Obviously, this is the one that actually starts the games for season 2, and Gi-hun is there, and we see some characters that we met already. The woman who seemingly might be pregnant. What was her name? Kim something. Jung-jae Kim is her name. Admittedly, there's a lot of characters interested in this episode, so forgive me if I'm just referring to them as like a descriptor rather than like a name, because it's a lot of new people to remember. And I don't even think they said most of their names, to be honest. I should have been noting down player numbers, I suppose. But we're introduced to her being there, her boyfriend slash partner, who's there kind of separately. He, I think, is the crypto guy who seemingly lost a lot of people a lot of money by recommending some crypto investments or something like that. So we get him. We get a new pair of characters where there's a mother and a son both in there, and they're both surprised to see each other in there. And she's constantly kind of yelling at him, and in a fun way. It's kind of a comical relationship. It was kind of a nice change of pace for the type of dynamics that were in there. One of the more notable characters is a rapper who I was reading Thanos in the subtitles, but I think they were pronouncing it Thanos. But he's got like pink hair, and he's kind of well, he's an asshole, I suppose, is the quick way of putting it, but he's got a bit more of an erratic personality. We'll say that. So he's in there, he kind of sticks out as being one of the notable characters. And another notable character is a trans character who's introduced, and there's a little bit of controversy because it's a male actor playing a trans woman on the show, and I know there was some passionate kind of discourse about that before the show came out. I'm not going to like make any sort of big judgments myself here. I just wanted to acknowledge it and sort of bring up that it's a thing that's here. I will say, at least so far, I don't know where the season's going to go with this character, but so far it does seem to be doing a decent job with the portrayal of the character in the show, in that the subject is brought up and the character herself kind of does something heroic by the end of the episode, so it feels like there's some, it feels like they're being given an equal share of like dramatic thought and weight, and it seems like it's going to be a character worth rooting for. So, but that's another major character that's introduced here. There might be one or two other ones that I've not remembered quite yet. I'm sure they'll come up as I'm talking about what happens in the episode. I mean, technically, there's one that I do remember, which is kind of the shallow girl, the one who's like, "Can I have one of those pink outfits? Because those would look way cuter on me." She's there, and she felt like she was going to be a notable character for the season. Of course, she's the shock first death of the episode. She's the one that goes first. She's the one that we get to know enough that it's a big deal that she dies. Big, relatively speaking, to the context of all the red shirts who are also dying. But anyway, there's a lot of interesting things about this episode other than just introducing the characters, and that is primarily what is the same about the games and what is different. Because going into this episode, I wasn't even sure if they were going to play the same games. I remember in season 1, I think it was before they did the one where they were carving out the shapes and like the pancakes or whatever it was. I remember there being like, oh, the next game is going to be this, implying there was lots of potential games that it could be. Like they've got different ones that they rotate in and out. So I wasn't sure if we were going to get the exact same set of games, and we still might not. But the first game is the same game as before. It's the red light, green light game. And it's really fascinating watching this play out. And I think some of the people who don't like this episode, and perhaps this goes on for more of the season, is that they see the same game being played and they think this is too much of a retread. Whereas I am going to defend that a little bit. And yes, you could make it more exciting by doing a brand new game and we don't know what it is and we have to learn the rules again, just like we did with all the games in the first season. But the more interesting thing, at least to start off with, I think is seeing how Gi-hun approaches doing the same game again. What does he do when he's presented with the same scenario? I was questioning at the end of the last review, is he going to like tell everyone that he's played the game before? Is that something he's going to keep to himself? What is he going to try and do with this information, and how does it play differently based on how we saw it go the first time? To me, seeing what changes about the games based on what we know from season 1, because we have a completely different perspective and we have a character who knows what's coming, that is so much more interesting to me for at least some of this season than just doing new things for the sake of doing new things. So, and that starts off right from the get-go, because when they announced that there's some different rules to the overall game, namely they announced that at the end of each round there'll be a vote every time if they want to leave or not. And immediately it's like, oh, that's different. It feels like maybe they've even learned from what happened during the game that the Gi-hun was in. Like maybe because they demanded to vote to leave, that's something they've implemented. And it sounds like it's a more fair thing at face value, especially when they add on, hey, any of the prize money that has been accumulated at that point will be split up amongst everyone and you all get to take that home. Which is when Gi-hun actually speaks up to clarify, like, wait, you mean the money like goes with us? Because that's not something he was offered. When they voted to leave back in season 1, they were not given a penny when they left for a while and then came back. And that sounds better, obviously. Like, initially, that sounds quite good. But the problem with that is, though, is that it actually is just a sneakier way of manipulating everyone. Because when we get to the end of the episode, and we get to this idea of, yeah, you split the money and take it all home, but there's still 350 of you, and you're splitting this amount based on who's already died. If you make it through one more round, you'll maybe lose another 50 people, another 100 people, so there's less shares, and the money will went up. So it's like a, exponential increase every single time you make it through a round. You're almost provoking the gambling instincts in a lot of the characters by encouraging this. And I think the more interesting stuff that comes out of it is later on, where they make a more of a genuine, like they've planned for these votes. They've got, not only have they got like a patch on the outfits for them to put a patch, like a badge on their tracksuits to indicate which side they voted in. But they've got these big platforms on the ground. They've got buttons that light up. They have to make the vote in front of everyone. I can't remember if they did that in season 1 or not, but certainly they're way more prepared for it this time than they were in season 1. And the thing that really stuck out to me about this was just how hard this kind of hit towards the end of the episode. Just, living through several elections now in my life where it's been too close and it shouldn't be close, even if the side that I think should wins. The fact that the colours are red and blue, I don't know if South Korea uses those colours for elections, but certainly both the UK and the US do. So it was hard not to see this vote be close and have it be really all down to just the final few people and which way it was going to tip. This idea that it's going to be 51% against 49% rather than like an overall kind of margin, and seeing that heartbreak on Gi-hun's face as he realizes it's going to be close. Like, he thinks, oh yeah, we'll all vote, and enough people have now seen that people are dying, so we're all going to vote to leave. And he's made some big speeches that they should leave. And then it starts being like, no, it's neck and neck the entire time. Like, it really could go either way. And the heartbreak realizing that they might not win the vote. Like, that was very relatable in so many ways. And I think this idea of manipulating the people inside the game, like the population of a country, and seeing the it break down into just two sides, red and blue, and like the pleading and like the arguments on either side of why they should stay or leave was, I think, was quite inspired. And it's really what I think. There's two things I really love about this episode. There's the vote and everything around the vote, how it splits into these two groups, the arguments for and against, and all that sort of section of the episode. The other thing I really love in the episode is Gi-hun's sort of like actual role during the game, during the red light, green light, where they go into the same, open area that they did in the first season. There's that big doll robot thing at the end, turning around and all that. And before it starts, he just says, hey, everyone, listen up. They're going to kill you. If you move when it's red light, they will shoot you. And they don't take him seriously. They joke and say that he's drunk or whatever. It's like no one's really listening to him. But what was interesting is that because he made it clear what the game was, even if they don't believe the murder part, they at least kind of like I mean, based on my memory, I think they had a much better start than season 1 did. Like they stop a few times before someone dies here. It's almost like in a weird way he's kind of at least got them into the right mindset for what the game is. And it's not until the first girl, like, there's like a bee or something on her neck and she freaks out, and that's, like the first actual death. And then a bunch of people panic and run, and, we get more and more of the deaths. But what I really liked about it is, like, he starts, like, manipulating the system and the rules of the game. He starts holding his arm up, like he's like Dracula or something, to his face, so that he can talk whilst they're meant to be holding still, because the machine, the detectors, the motion sensors, can't see his mouth moving if his arm's in front of his mouth. Like, all of that, like him taking charge and trying to talk them through it and saying, hey, don't move, try and form lines. Like, if you're not at the line, if you're not at the end of the game by the time the timer runs out, they'll shoot you anyway. So we have to keep moving. So try and protect the people who are struggling by standing in front of them. And, they do kind of form these lines where there's kind of an order to this. And there's a character that's introduced that knows Gi-hun, someone who was an old friend, who's mad at him initially for losing touch with him. He, at a certain point during this game, after all this has went down, is like behind him, and he's like, hey, I'm behind you all the way now. Like, I'm never leaving from behind you now. Like, I'll follow you anywhere, Gi-hun, you know what you're doing. And, like, it's a whole thing. And there's like big moments that play out here. One of the big things they show, of course, is that Newell, the character that was introduced in episode 2, is one of the snipers in this game who is taking shots at people and seems to be very, like, aggressive about it. Like, she's looking very watchfully to catch anyone and is more than willing to take the shots. And most notably, the final shot, which is some people who trip over because someone is shot near the end of the game. Someone who gets shot falls into this one guy, and he kind of stumbles a little bit, and he begs and says, it wasn't my fault, they fell into me, it's not my fault, I moved. And the sniper who shoots him isn't the one we're following, it's this other random guy, and he shoots him in the leg. So he's not dead, but he's wailing out in pain. And this is a great moment as well for Gi-hun, because Gi-hun, who's already over the line, and he's talking the rest of them who have not made it yet through it, he's trying to make everyone band together and to get over the line. He runs back on to the active, game. He runs back on past the line into the danger zone, if you will. It sounds stupid when I say it that way. But he runs back on to save the guy who's been shot in the leg, to pick him up and help him to get to the finish line. And this is the moment where the trans character steps in, because he can't quite do it on his own. He's about to drop the guy and maybe get them both killed. And this other character, the trans character, jumps in and like helps Gi-hun out, and they're both propping him up. And it's a really nice moment. This character, other than establishing that it's a trans character, because we have like a little conversation with the mum and son talking about that, there's not really much to give us a sense of character necessarily. But this moment goes a long way. And it's actually quite interesting that this character then votes to keep the games going. I thought that was interesting, that one of the good, quote-unquote good characters who was likable and had done something heroic was also one of the ones voting to stay in the game for, whatever reason that may be. But that added some depth as well. But this was a great heroic moment for both of them. And I think this general idea that Gi-hun is trying to, like, lead them and make them all band together and say, no, we can all work together, we can all vote to get out of here. it's feeding back into that ideological debate from the end of season one, which is that people are good or bad, and that, you know, Gi-hun believed that someone would help that man in the street, right? He's trying to, like, sort of do it in a bigger scale. He's trying to help all these people and get them through this and convince them that they need to leave. And then it's heartbreaking for him. That's part of why the vote is so heartbreaking, is because half the people straight up reject what he's saying because they're greedy, because they're whatever, right? You could probably further analyze it way more than that, but the fact that he has to then go through this, and there's a whole bit in the middle of the vote where he starts begging the people who have not voted yet to consider what they're doing. And it's actually there when he finally reveals, I played the game before, because they start accusing him of being a plant. Like, he knows too much. He's clearly been planted here to confuse us. And he's like, no, I played the game before. Everyone else died. And instead of that scaring everyone, look, the rapper character comes up to him and is just like, well, that means you know how to do this. So we've got a better chance because you can tell us how to win. So why would we leave? Like, he twists the words and turns it into a positive. So he's clearly our more villainous character for the season. And not just because of this, though. He actually pushed a few people to their death during the game, which I will say the one critique I'll have of the game, which I very much enjoyed, was I did think the song that started playing, like the cover of Fly Me to the Moon, was a little weird, a little out of place. Like, not that it was like a weird song, but just that it was like a weird inclusion in the scene. Even though I did like the camera work as it started, because it was right after he pushes two people to their death, and then he looks just delightful as he's like jumping through joy as he goes to the next part of the game. So that's my one nitpick really of that part. But I think all of this was super fascinating. How the dynamic of the game changes when we know what's coming, but more importantly, I think our main character knows what's coming and tries to use that information to help people and influence things. And at a certain point, like, the people running the game are happy to see how it plays out. I think the front man is watching this game very intently to see how it's playing out, with him in there manipulating and influencing the others to do certain things. But also, there's a point during this debate where they're sort of having this argument during the vote, where eventually the soldiers come over and say, okay, we're banning this now. You're not allowed to like influence the votes in any way. All of these debates about it are done. We're just going to vote one by one now. And sure enough, you know, it leads to the final few votes. And I will say, like, the reveal at the end is also quite cool, just because of what it potentially means for the rest of the season, and the idea that we're getting to know a character that has been just this mysterious person the whole time. And that is, of course, that the front man is in the game. He's not in the first game, but he's joined the group of players as 001. He is the final vote, because it starts with Gi-hun at 456 and works its way down. It's tied even, and like either side is cheering when someone votes for their side. It's 50-50, and it's 001 who goes in and presses the, you know, keep playing button, turns around and smiles. And as much as I critique the song choice during the game itself for the montage, really, really liked the piano score that was playing for this final few minutes of the episode. 001 walking up to the button and like the pressing of it, I thought was really, really emotional and cinematic, and had that nice little bit of mystery to it, even though I think it was quite obvious what was about to happen, right? Honestly, as soon as they showed the number 001 but didn't show their face, I called who it was. I said it's him, right? Partly because they also showed that he left his chair earlier on, back up in his viewing room. But so it's not like it's unpredictable. It's not like a huge shock, but it does make a lot of sense that we're going to get to flesh this character out. And season one did have someone on the games that was, you know, responsible for the games. We had the old man. This season, the front man's going to be here, and we know he's won before. That was like a whole thing, right? So yeah, I mean, I think as far as setting up the rest of the season, this reveal at the end is really cool and really shakes things up. And it basically means that it's almost like he came in to balance the scale a little bit, that Gi-hun's giving like an unfair advantage to the players. So the front man's in to be someone who also knows things, but is on the other side of it. He's on the other side of, he wants the games to keep going. So it feels like a natural, like, villain to our hero in that way, in the sense of actually influencing players in the game. And I think that's super interesting. Which something else they said, by the way, which is important, is that they also said that at the end of the game, there could be more than one winner. They said that, whoever's left at the end can split the money. So potentially, much like Gi-hun wanted to do in season 1, like they could split it between 2 or 3 people. So that option seems to be there this time. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, also there was one character I didn't mention earlier because I don't know what to make of her yet. But there's a character who early on starts saying things to Gi-hun about how he's carrying demons around with him, and it's the ghosts of the people he's lost that drove him here, which is true. There's the characters from season 1 that died that we know have been haunting his dreams back from the first episode of the season. So she's right. And she also says something to him when he's going up to vote towards the end of the episode. I don't really know what to make of her as of yet, or what we're going to do with her. As for right now, she's kind of just this poignant kind of kooky character, but we'll see what else we do with her as things go on. So, but they're definitely worth mentioning. Also worth mentioning, of course, the other characters on the outside. The tracking device, they knew about it. They took it out. They even put his fake tooth back in so that Gi-hun thought it was still there. We intercut like him realizing that he's going to actually have to play one of the games, that his cavalry's not showing up. As the cavalry, Jun-ho and the team find the tracker and a fisherman's supply of maggots and bait on one of the little islands, presumably nowhere near the actual island because they don't want him to find it. And they're like, shit, we're going to have to just look for it now. And we saw how well that was going for Jun-ho before the start of the season. So, not expecting a great rush of things there, but yeah. Oh, actually, I completely glossed over the final part of the game that I wanted to mention, which is the man that Gi-hun saves is shot dead anyway after the game is over. Once they get over the line, it's actually our girl with a sniper rifle up in the things, Noel shoots him in the head, and one of the other soldiers says, damn, that was, I can't remember what he said exactly, but it was like, that was cold. Why did you do that? And she's like, he was eliminated. The fact that he was still breathing and was dragged over the line does not change that he was eliminated. So she is particularly cold at this job, and I'm very fascinated to see more of her be developed. I do wonder if there's going to be another episode later in the season that is primarily following her. Maybe like, because last season we only had 6 games, but we had 9 episodes, so there was a couple of episodes without games. We've already had a couple, of course, without games, but I do wonder if we maybe get an episode where there's either no game, or for the time that's like before the game or after the game, we focus on her side of the story as opposed to Gi-hun or whatever. Maybe I suspect that might happen. But yeah, I really liked the episode. I think the way that it shook up the formula, and to me it was more interesting seeing how the same thing is now different and changed because of the variables, right? Like a science experiment, you have to have some constants, and then the variables are what make it interesting. Now, that wouldn't all work forever. Like if, in season 3, they're just doing the exact same games again, and it's just a slightly different scenario this time, that wouldn't work. But it really works for your first sequel to take the ideas that you had before and throw wrenches into them and shake them up and say, it's this, but it's now different. And I think Gi-hun being this influence because he has this knowledge, I think is really interesting to watch. It feeds in really well to him trying to be this heroic character who's trying to save them all. Because he always had heart in season 1, and it feels like, it's really been played up even more so now in season 2. And then all the stuff with the vote and the way it kind of felt like, oh no, they've just fine-tuned how they manipulate everyone. Like, they keep saying that you've got your choice, that you're here of your own volition, all that stuff. But it's like, yeah, but you're dangling the carrot in front of them. There's a reason why you dropped the money into the big piggy bank before you let them vote. You wanted them to see the money. You wanted them to get greedy and say, oh, if we stick around, we can get this. In fact, at one point, the older guy who's on the side of the rapper says, hey, if we all listen to this Gi-hun who's won this before, we can all win. I'm like, well, no. The only way the money goes up is that if some of you don't win. Like, some of you need to keep losing. And some of you are more crazy than others and will no doubt, like, go out your way to make sure as many people die as possible. So if I was to make a guess for the rest of the season, I don't think it'll be all the same games. I think one or two might be the same, but I think they'll intentionally pick different ones, the people running the show. As in, like, inside the TV show. I don't mean like the showrunners of the TV show. Like, the front man, if he's making decisions still, or if whoever's working under him is making these choices, I think they're going to specifically pick things that Gi-hun didn't play so they don't have an advantage. Maybe not the next game. Maybe they'll give him another one that he knows, but they're going to surprise him at some point with a game that he didn't play and he doesn't have the advantage. Because, like, I don't see the marbles game, right? You know, remember the marbles game from season 1? I don't see that one playing very well. Because he's just going to try and convince everyone. It'll just turn into a big fight. So, I see certain games not coming back. But, I could see maybe the tug of war being back again. But maybe not. Definitely the Glass Platforms one was a really fun game. That may have been my favorite game from season 1, actually. So, I wouldn't mind some variation on that if I'm being honest. But this was a solid episode because it did a really good job of introducing like 4, 5, 6 new characters. I'd have to like go and count them to really like keep track of them all. The rapper's pissed at the crypto guy because he blames him for losing his money because he invested in the thing that he told him to invest in. So you've got that, and even that's an example of like the accountability and stuff like that. Like the crypto guy just says, hey, at the end of every video I said it's up to your own judgment if you think something's worth investing regardless of what my advice is. There's a disclaimer, so I'm in the clear. So it kind of made me feel like, yeah, you kind of manipulated people in the same way that these Squid Game people are manipulating people. So you're actually very much getting a taste of your own medicine here in many ways. But I think that's a big theme of this. I mean, it always has been, as even in season 1, but I think now seeing him actually divide the group into the two sides, and not only that, but making them wear a badge that tells everyone else which side you were on when you voted. And I feel like there's going to be a stigma. Like the people wearing the red X's and the blue circles are going to feel like they're in two different camps. And some of them might get kind of tribal. I could see that being where we go with this. And it could lead to a lot more hatred. It could lead to a, hey, if we kill everyone on the other side, that's more money for all of us. At least until it gets down to however many and they all start betraying each other. There's definitely a lot of potential there. So, you hope that Gi-hun's heart and his attempts are not going to be in vain, and he's going to convince enough people and like win over enough people to have some version of a happy ending. Not that I'm expecting an ending per se, because I know it was basically split into 2 seasons. I'm expecting a cliffhanger, but I don't know if that's going to be like before we get 6 games or if it's going to be more of a different thing. But I'm starting to think that since we only got the first game in episode 3 and there's only 4 left, I've got a funny feeling we're only going to get like 2 more games and then we're waiting to season 3 for the rest of this group of characters. I could be wrong. I could be very wrong. They could do 2 games in 1 episode. It's not impossible, especially if they're sort of repeating some of the ones and they can speed through them a little bit more. That's very possible, but that was very good. I honestly have very little complaints. The one awkward song choice, I think everything they're doing so far is a fascinating way of seeing how things have changed with these different elements in play. And I don't see that as a retread. I really don't. Now, it's entirely possible there's things after this that are going to feel like a retread. I don't think this feels like a retread. This feels like a good sequel to me, where it's introducing other variables that are affecting how things go, and it's seeing how they've changed and how it changes what happens and how the people in charge are manipulating things in ways because they've learned from what happened in season 1. Those are the fascinating things, and I think it's very rich in that so far. I do think this is the best episode of the season so far, and I'm excited for more. So let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff helps out a bunch if you do. And of course, you can support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. But that is me. So thank you once again. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?